Hello, good morning. Now, welcome to the next session. In this session, I am going to talk about common pitfalls of DS projects. So, last time I explained you about the risk analysis and risk associated with the failure of the data science project, and today we are going to see what are the common pitfalls and how to avoid the risk in the DS project. So, we will explore the common pitfall as well as the mistake that increases the risk your DS project will encounter and easy to commit. So, whenever we are making a project, sometime knowingly the risk is known or unknowingly the risk is getting inherently built into the system. So, we will explore what are the common pitfall and the mistakes we do it that will increase the what we call as risk of our data science project and that are easy to commit. So, it is important to know how to deal with the risk for the success. Do not think that risk will never be there. Risk will always be a part of any system, any part of any DS project or anything which we develop. So, risk is a inherent phenomenon. Okay. So, we have to think about how to deal with them for a success of our project, and different type of DS solutions have many tempting ways of executing the project that can lead to a undesired difficulties in the later stages of the project. So, when the risk is involved, it will yield the problem at the later stages of our project. We will pick up and mitigate those issues one by one while following the data science project life cycle. So, the topics I am going to cover is avoid common risk of the data science project, approaching research project and dealing with the prototype and a term called as minimum viable product or minimum MVP project or minimum viable product project. Mitigating risk in production oriented data science system. So, this is very important called as MVP, minimum viable product, where the risk involved is minimum. Okay. So, how to avoid the common risk of a data science project, that is the underlying principle for us to understand. So, let us go ahead and we say that the first and most important risk of any data science project is the goal definition. We are not clear what we want, something we want, but we are not clear about what exactly we want to achieve from the DS science project or what is the ultimate target of my project. So, the correct goal definition plays a major part in the success formula of my data science project. It is often tempting to jump into the implementation stage of the project right after you have defined the task definition. So, we are always tempted to go start with the coding part. We are directly implementing stages, regardless of whether it is a vague or a unclear. So, many times the things are not clear in the beginning. Slowly and slowly as we progress in the project, the things become clear and the vagueness is becoming less and less. So, by doing this, your risk solving the task is an entirely different way from what the business actually needs. Very simple and very critical point is, by doing this kind of analysis or risk analysis, okay, or risk solving, the task in any is an entirely different way from what the businesses look for. Business look for a minimum amount of risk, but when we go in the project, the risk is already there, and how to become less and less risky. It is important that you define a concrete and measurable goal that will give you and team a tool that can be used to distinguish between what is right and what is wrong as a what we call as a solution. So, this is the way we try to address the issue. Now, let us see how we make it. So, to make sure that the project goal is defined very correctly, we have understood the definition of the project, we have understood the scope of the project. So, let us try to understand what we call as a checklist. Number one is you have a quantifiable business metric that can be calculated from the input data and the algorithm output. So, what is my input? Input is my input metric and the algorithm gives me a output. So, I can use a measure of my input, I can measure a output from the metric. Second, The business understand the most important technical metrics that you use. So, we use the metric is equal to F1 score for accuracy, precision and things like that. Okay. So, business understand the most important technical metrics that we are going to use. The third point is the task is defined in DS terminology. So, we have to define all our tasks in our DS terminology. However, business uses a different kind of terminology. So, both we have to understand. You know, if we are solving a classification or a regression or any kind of another task and have an idea how the approach is with a technicality. So, a classification problem accuracy, a regression problem accuracy or any other type of accuracy or precision will be entirely different. You understand the details of the business processes and the domain of the problem. Domain of the problem. So, when I am developing a DS project for an insurance company or a RTA company or any other company, I need to understand the business processes starting from the registration of the vehicle to the payment of the payment gateway. So, business processes has to be understood and what other is involved to be understood as a domain of the problem. All of the data sources that are required for the start of the project exist and can be accessed by the implementation team. So, this is another requirement. And another important issue is the documentation. Let me tell you, we are all very poor in documentation. Documentation is a must. Though we follow a agile methodology, though we follow another, but after the things are over, we have to have a good documentation because a human mind are easily to forget about what we did. So, in data science project, experiment results can often change the course of the project. So, underlying principle, it is a change. It is important to log all the experiments along with the decisions and conclusions that you make. So, slowly and slowly I keep on changing my analysis part and I will not be, if I am not able to document, I will forget what I did a day ago or 5 days ago and things like that. So, we say that fixing any incoming changes when it comes to data and requirement is also a necessity or a necessary. So, when you have this information, you will be able to see whole line of thought and that will make your solution to work better as it wanted to be. So, being aware of the common risks of the data science project will help you to recover from the major project mistakes, but the devil is already in there. So, risk is unavoidable. Okay. So, approaching a research project is any project that will give a solution to see the world new, not well known problem. It may be a new problem or a not very well known problem. There is also a research work. So, research projects are not always about advances in the science. If your team deals with a new kind of business domain or you have a new type of machine learning library or a algorithm, these are also considered to be a research project. For example, Keras library goes on what we call as a upgrading and library functions are sometimes deprecated, earlier library versions are deprecated. So, that is also a part of the research. So, any new type of machine learning library, these are also considered to be a research project. Discovering ways to apply data science to new business domain is also a research. So, research does not mean that you will always have to find out a new thing. A existing thing can also be modified and it can also become a research project. Almost every data science project include a research sub-project that takes care of the modeling process. So, first pitfall of the research project is the absence of the scope. Whenever I am doing a project, first thing I do not define my scope. What is my scope? Now, what is meaning by scope? Every research project must have a clear scope, otherwise it won't be possible to finish it. What I want? Scope is up to delivery of a solution or delivery of a solution to the customer premises, or after that we have to go for the maintenance. All these are all what you call the scope of the project from the beginning. So, every research project must have a clear scope, otherwise it won't be possible to finish it. It is also important to fix any external constraint for a research project. So, what is external constraint? If a project has to be delivered to a customer, the customer has to agree with the constraints too. Okay, every now and then he can't change the requirement. So, your research budget will also grow as the scope size also increases. So, this is the problem, and when the scope size increases, definitely the risk involved also will be increasing more. So, limited budget may also affect the depth and length of the research you are able to do. So, it is very clear that the first pitfall of the research project is this. So, the next point is, when you have a idea of your research capability, you can start filing in the experiment backlog with your team. So, each entry in the backlog should contain a idea that may advance your model quality to help to reach the desired functionality. And we already know the SMART criteria. So, you can see that every time I put something new, I have to keep a log of that, and that is what we call a documentation is very important. So, for example, an initial experiment backlog for a binary classification problem may look like this: perform exploratory data analysis (EDA) and familiarize with yourself with the data. Create a baseline model using a gradient boosting and basic pre-processing. So, you have a gradient boosting method available, and we use it for a very good machine learning algorithm. Test the encoding for a categorical variable like a hash encoding. Test the encoding for a categorical variable like a target encoding. And feature engineering, measure the effect of a date functions and date features, and feature engineering aggregate the feature the day window. So, you can see that for a binary classification problem, I can think about all the initial experiment backlog. So, I am using ADA, I am using the boosting algorithm, I am using the hash encoding, I am using a target encoding, and I am using the feature engineering. So, with this I stop here. Thank you.